Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another live webcast of the ICJ. Today, we are going to talk about a real crucial issue and development, and I would say tragic development in the protection of human rights in Europe, and in particularly in Turkey. Today, we are going to address the sudden, unexpected, and shocking decision by the President of the Republic of Turkey some weeks ago to withdraw from the Council of Europe Convention to fight against violence against women and domestic violence, which is called and better known as the Istanbul Convention, even more shocking from an image point of view. And it is the first withdrawal from a human rights treaty of this kind in Turkey, and is the first withdrawal from this key human rights treaty for the protection of women's rights in the Council of Europe. So there is a lot we need actually to address and to think about. And today I'm joined by two key experts because we want to know more what happened, why it happened, and what's the impact in Turkey of this decision. We have them here. So welcome. We are joined by, and I apologize already in advance if I mispronounce the names, Aslihan Tekin, who is EU representative of the Women's Coalition of Turkey, and Elif from the more Çatı, Women's Shelter Foundations. If I mispronounce things, please correct me when you introduce yourselves. Before we start, some house rules. This is an informal conversation, even if it's live and it's public. So for all those following us, please do not hesitate to share it, to tell your friends. We're going to be here for at least half an hour. Do not hesitate to actually make comments in the chat and ask us questions. We're going to try to address them towards the end of this webcast. And so we go. We go with a bit more parliamentary format there. We go a bit, maybe if you want first to introduce yourself, Aslihan, and then Elif. Welcome here, Aslihan.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Massimo. My name is Aslihan Tekin. Today I'm representing Women's Coalition Turkey and also European Women's Lobby Coordination for Turkey. I'm EU representative based in Brussels. I'm a jurist myself, and I'm working with civil society, women's rights organizations on women's human rights and gender equality mainly, and also rule of law and democracy. So if I should tell a bit about European Women's Lobby, if you would like, I mean, we represent at EU level 26 member states, including I think three candidate countries, and one free trade association, and also 17 European-wide organizations. So at the outreach, we reached out to 2,000 organizations in Europe, including Turkey. And European Women's Lobby Coordination for Turkey is a member of this umbrella organization since 2004. And we have been advocating at the EU level on gender equality, women's rights agenda, and as we are also trying to, be the bridge between EU and Turkey on the gender equality and feminist agenda. So we bring our expertise from Turkey to EU agenda, and from what we accomplish at the EU level, we try to bring it to our agenda in Turkey. And Women's Coalition is a 20-year-old platform with grassroots organizations working on women's participation to economic, social, and political life. So we are collaborating with the international organizations as well. So we have a long-standing, and Çatı is our member in both platforms. So Elif, please, your floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for, thank you for inviting us. If I tell you a little bit about Çatı and myself, I'm a volunteer at Çatı. Çatı was founded in 1990. It's the 30-year-old foundation, and we have a solidarity center and a shelter. We are founded by feminists and we provide social, psychological, and social, psychological, and legal supports to women. We build solidarity with women who experience violence. And our shelter is the only independent women's shelter in Turkey that is governed by feminist practice through feminist principles. In addition to that, we also conduct a lot of monitoring by receiving knowledge and experience from women who apply to us, who call us and reach us. We monitor the system, the support mechanisms as well, and we write regular reports, participate to national and international lawmaking processes. This is all from me now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as everyone can see, we really got the right expertise to know what's the impact of this decision. So just to make it short, an explanation to people following us. Since the last year and a half, there had been some press and discussions. There have been certain I think we can clearly define conservative views held in the political arena in Turkey that were depicting this Council of Europe Convention against women, and they were targeted as a symbol. And there were this threat around of withdrawal, but actually in the last months there was almost a feeling that they were almost fading out, and suddenly it was really sudden. On the night between the 19th and the 20th of March, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan issued a presidential decree, and with a presidential decree, so an executive decision, ordered the withdrawal from an international convention of that importance, an international convention that had Turkey as the first ratifier, the first signatory, and because of that is known everywhere as the Istanbul Convention. It was really a symbolic and strong flagship of also the commitment of Turkey to human rights. My first question actually is almost very human, in a sense, as women's rights activists, as women. How did you feel? What did you feel? What were your thoughts when you woke up and saw this decision?
I don't know.
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, it was a shock because even though, as you have mentioned, we had survived the summer when rest of Europe was surviving through COVID and the implications of COVID on women's rights and so forth. In Turkey, we were not only tackling with the impact of COVID, but also the attacks of the government officials on the threatening on the withdrawal decision from the Istanbul Convention. And then, as you said, there was a break, there was a silence, but we didn't sleep very well, believe me, until 19th of March either. So we were always under the feeling like what's going to happen. We were not aware of it. We didn't want to think it's going to happen, and it was still a shock. And when we woke up on that morning of the 20th March, but already on the 19th of March, we have had in the early afternoon, we heard about this decision, and we started to look around, get in contact with different officials, try to get a clear picture, and we didn't get we get some assumptions. We heard about the decision, and then in the evening, at midnight, we get the official gazette published online, and then we have already been in touch with international and national fora. Women were on the street. Nobody accepted the decision. It was an outcry. I mean, we were shocked, but we still don't believe it's going to happen because we still uphold the Istanbul Convention. But I should also say, as a personal shock to myself, if you want to hear really.
Yes, please, yeah.
I mean, in March is the month of the celebrations of International Women's Day. We are super busy. Women's movement on the globe. We are super busy, and this is with the COVID. We do everything online in Zoom, and we were in this UNCSW 65th. Normally it's organized in New York every year. Delegations travel to US, and we were doing the Zoom meetings. So everything is 24 hours within 24 hours time schedule. schedule. So we were shocked, and this was a big statement, outcry from the officials, from the president, if you want to say, from Turkey, to women's rights, organizations, the society, to women, that they are withdrawing from Istanbul Convention. So was an outcry, as a war, declaration of war on women's human rights, because it is the month of women's rights, and then you declare withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention as a gold standard. It is accepted, not only in Europe but in the globe. So this was a unacceptable attack, and it still is. I'll leave it to Elif. Maybe you would like to.
Yeah, I wanna say like similar stuff as well. We knew a little bit in the evening, and of course we couldn't sleep. We were waiting, and it is very frustrating and disappointing to say that like we were refreshing the official gazettes, like trying to understand what's happening with our rights. Like that's exactly not like how a citizenship works, basically. So it was a big loss for us, of course. It was a big shock, big like despair, feelings of sadness. We couldn't sleep. It is a very bad feeling as like a feminist, as a women's rights activist, but also as like more Çatı. This is something that we use every day. Every day, like when we will talk more about this maybe later today, but like every day when we apply to certain support mechanisms, we use this as a safety net for us. So it felt really bad in that sense as well. But also we knew that it was us who was supposed to fight against this too. So you can't just like feel despair and then just give up. At midnight, we were supposed to prepare a statement for more Çatı, for instance, and like social media posts. We immediately in the morning contacted our friends who sent us like amazing solidarity messages from all around Europe. And also because Mor Çatı is very much founded from the feminist movement. A lot of women here, a lot of Mor Çatı volunteers are also part of the feminist movement. So while we were like trying to come up with the press statement and etc., we were also working with other women outside Mor Çatı to organize the protests. So in the afternoon we took on the streets after doing all of this work. So it was like there were a lot of mixed emotions that day, a lot of despair, but at the same time, when we came together in the afternoon in Istanbul, for instance, in Kadıköy, felt really strong because in all around Turkey, very immediately in so many cities, there were protests organized. It was amazing to see. As Aslihan said, like we were kind of used to it. We suffered summer like this. We were prepared for this. But even in that case, in like a couple of hours, we were organized all around Turkey.
If I may compliment, it was, as Elif rightfully mentioned, immediately the reaction went on to, non-stop meetings, online Zoom meetings within the solidarity networks, within platforms, within movements of where we belong. But then immediately we get from EU institutions, from European-wide organizations, international global networks, due to this, also UNCSW meetings and so forth, we were immediately, triggered. We were able to trigger all those mechanisms through European Women's Lobby, from Women's Coalition networks and on the grassroots organizations. But the solidarity, there was a big snowball effect, as Elif mentioned. Women were on the streets, even though there were restrictions due to COVID. They still are, and also, the international global support poured on us, and still is. So we started to call it like women's global strike. It was a big awareness raising on Istanbul Convention. As Elif rightfully mentions, we have been working on Istanbul Convention. We're going to mention it later, of course, for a long while. But then I think Istanbul Convention has never been so much heard in such a short period of time, and all the institutions, all the organizations were triggered due to the Turkey's women's movements work on the ground.
So from a political point of view, actually this has raised more awareness than actually it was before. Elif, my question would be, legally speaking, the withdrawal will take effect in July. However, since, in your experience, you're there, since, has there already been some impact on the ground? Can we already see that women's rights are worse off since the declaration of withdrawal? What's happening basically to women's rights right now in Turkey?
This is a question that we are asked constantly, of course, and it is very important for us not to rush to any conclusions very easily. It has been a month, and a month is like a very short time, and we are trying to continue to monitor the situation. So it is very important for us to evaluate the situation as a whole with all of its dimensions. Not to rush to any, if I even may say, like populist rhetoric by taking like March 20th as a very, like as the only turning point in regards to the way support mechanisms work in Turkey. We are very cautious about this because we know that the support mechanisms had a lot of issues before March 20th as well, like before that turning point. I'm not dismissing it. It is a very important turning point for us, for the feminist movement, even for Turkey's democratization process. But in terms of the support mechanisms, we can't just rush to any conclusions. We can say that problems with implementation were already in common, but we are monitoring the situation still. But keeping this in mind, I also want to know that like problems in implementation was caused by certain like officials who didn't do their duties, who didn't conduct their responsibilities, and we can easily, I think, say that of course this decision will give them courage, right? We know about this. We know that before too. We weren't able to see how the Istanbul Convention would be implemented completely. We didn't experience that. We didn't have a chance to observe that. But now we have this, like, they feel more encouraged by this. Perpetrators, men, are also feeling more encouraged by this. The ones who are inflicting violence. And we got feedbacks from women. From women's perspective, they also feel very much like isolated. They feel very alone, and they sent us comments saying that like they now feel like they are left alone to their destiny by the state. So we can say this part, but we need some time to continue to monitor and to we have like so many plans with writing certain reports to show how this situation affected concretely women on the ground. And we have like in a short time, we are continuing to monitor. In a short time, we will come up with our observations.
Thank you very much. And from a legal point of view, Aslihan, what's the impact? What are we going to expect may change in Turkey?
Massimo, it is as soon as this decision was, public, women's organizations, bar associations, individuals, lawyers, they all prepared their cases before the Court of State. It is the highest administrative court in Turkey, because we find the decision, this presidential decision, against Constitution of Turkey. Because there are certain articles in the Constitution, like one of them, which is like Article 90 of the Constitution, which says actually if a law is adopted through the legislative train of like approval through the Grand National Assembly of Turkey, then the withdrawal decision should also follow the same principle of parallelism. To be able to withdraw, then you need the decision, the law from the Grand National Assembly of Turkey suggesting this, approving this. And it wasn't done like that. This decision came through a presidential decision, and which also has a reference within itself to a decree, which we find against the Constitution of Turkey, because there's another article in the Constitution of Turkey, which is 104. It says you can withdraw you cannot withdraw from a convention on human rights or freedoms through a presidential decree or a decision. So these are complete. I mean, there are several. There are other implications through the constitution, and also as soon as the decision was public, I think it was the Presidential Communications Office. They have made the announcement, like the reason of the withdrawal was a normalization of homosexuality. So this is in itself is a hate speech, hate crime against universal human rights, international legislation, international human rights law, and all those conventions that Turkey is a state party of, including European Convention on Human Rights, Istanbul Convention, CEDAW, So this is, and they are targeting openly not only women's rights or women's rights, but also LGBTI plus communities. So rather, I mean, this is a big impact on the legislative, side. First of all, in the domestic legislation. So we are waiting for the decisions at the Council of State. I will not get into that debate in depth, but within the given circumstances of rule of law and democracy and independence of judiciary, we will see what the decision will be. But the Constitution of Turkey is there. So I mean, the discussions are there. So we will try to, exhaust all the existing domestic, legislation and steps, and then afterwards, we have, a constitutional court, we have the Court of Human Rights. So this is a long run, I would say. We will continue. We will uphold the Istanbul Convention, and for us, we still, keep announcing that Turkey is bound with this convention, and we are still party of it, and the decision will take place on the 1st of July, according to the Council of Europe regulations. But we also want to make it more heard. We have given the reference to Vienna Convention of Treaties, which actually is said to be, a convention that you can take into account on the Council of Europe, conventions. But the Istanbul Convention itself has its Article 80, which reflects, shows how denunciation can be actually, be in place. And Turkey has fulfilled this, he notified, and we didn't accept that. Why? Because we didn't accept this decision as it was against the constitution of Turkey itself, and how Council of Europe could accept this decision. Women's organizations were reacting to that. We are aware of what the legal framework and how the steps should be fulfilled. But with this statement, we are trying to make all the institutions hear that Istanbul Convention needs better legal framework to be protected with this type of null and void decisions in place within the domestic legislation if a country decides to withdraw. And it is very important to see the effect of those countries who have already been discussing withdrawal in the EU level. They also had played a role within this decision, but it is like a chicken egg, problem. So I cannot say that this was a wide range of backlash on legislative and political stance on protection of women's human rights.
No, absolutely, and I find particularly curious that the line of attack on a convention whose aim is protecting against violence against women is the attack to the LGBTI community. So, let us be clear for all those listening to us. The prohibition of discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity is an international standard under all human rights treaties. So Turkey is already bound by that, by being part of the European Convention, being part of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And I'm not going to cite all of them, but someone can go online and read what is called the Yogyakarta Principles, which actually outline that. So either Turkey withdraws from all the human rights commitment, but then they will be bound by customary international law anyway, or it is a fake line of attack to say that a convention which is based on violence against women is the convention that is transmitting, that is supporting this kind of view. This kind of view is the mainstream interpretation of human rights everywhere in international law. And it's curious, I find, and I would like to hear your opinion on that it is a convention on women's rights which is used as the target for this form of attack, as if women's rights were more dispensable than the mainstream human rights. I don't know, Elif, what do you think? Is this, any thought about that?
Yeah, exactly. It is, if it is like you can get rid of women's rights, that's the attitude. I completely agree. And I also want to like direct attention to the fact that they also use the term like the unity of the family as well. Like the convention is against the unity of the family. This has been going on for a long time in Turkey with all the like family-oriented policies, and in all the attacks we see that there is this very concrete rhetoric against equality between men and women, between genders, and against women's right to live free from violence at the expense of the unity of the family, basically. So that's also another part of the rhetoric that we see here.
As if violence would be a founding ground of family
Can be, yeah,
to be preserved.
Yeah, yeah.
And sorry, one question more, Elif. What has been the impact of the Istanbul Convention actually for women's rights up to now? So basically, with this withdrawal, once it's going to be effective, in a sense, if you have to speculate, to think about it, based on your experience, what are what are people fighting for women's rights? Because in a sense, fighting for women's rights is also fighting against a model of patriarchy, which is damaging also for men, to be very frank. What are people going to lose?
Like for this question, we have to, as I said before, we have to think the whole issue, like the issue as a whole, basically. Not just like for the last month, not just like for the last year, but the last decade has seen in Turkey a very like significant shift towards family-oriented policies, towards inequality. We had like high-level officials openly, publicly uttering words like men and women are not equal, for instance. And these became very common, and there was this, like there has been this lack of will by the officials who were supposed to provide support to women. And we saw the effect of this at these like different institutions, including like law enforcement officials, family courts, prosecutors, sadly, and the violence prevention monitoring centers. These are all institutions and people who are supposed to support women. But this whole idea of rejection of equality penetrates into the society, penetrates into the whole bureaucracy. And we all know that violence derives from inequality. And this ideology, as this ideology penetrates to society, it becomes impossible to prevent violence in Turkey. And we have seen this in all of these like bad implementation cases, problems with the practices. We addressed them also like a lot in, for instance, most recently with the Gravio report. Gravio is the monitoring committee of the Istanbul Convention. We, as NGOs wrote, as women's organizations, we wrote a shadow report. Gravio wrote an evaluation report. They all underlined these implementation problems. We also participated as Çatı to the ECHR Opus group cases. There was a follow-up trial, like in a couple of months ago. We again submitted a shadow report for that process as well, and we like underlined all of these issues with all of these mechanisms. But we have seen that there are no sanctions against these bad practices. They were not punished by this. and which means that actually, just to like summarize it, the gap between the law and the implementation grew, the discrepancy grew bigger and bigger in Turkey. But with this Istanbul Convention, we had this tool in our hands, basically. We had this strategy to use when the system didn't work. This didn't guarantee any positive solutions. But when a woman applies to a police officer, like a police station, or when she goes to a bar association, or like any other municipal or public institutions, our social workers use Istanbul Convention as a safety net to pressure those figures, to tell them, to remind them about their rights. So in that sense, withdrawal means for us that like it's a very big, this pull-out decision will discourage women from applying to these mechanisms. I also want to like underline one minor point. We expect like some drastic changes in the domestic law. We now have a domestic law on violence against women in Turkey, aside from the Istanbul Convention. But with this decision, we are expecting like some changes in that, some cuts in that, and we are really concerned about that. And then there are certain rights granted by the convention that is not clearly secured in the domestic law as well. For instance, the ban on reconciliation. As part of this family-oriented idea, family-oriented policy, there is this tendency to reconciliate, basically, the husband and wife. So we are concerned about that. And lastly, like last week, there was a commission in the parliament formed to work on the violence against women issue, and we saw that the whole issue was seen solely from the perspective of the family, solely from the perspective of strengthening the family, limiting the numbers of divorce. So this is alarming in that sense as well.
Thank you very much. To be honest, this last sentence reminds me, for those who don't understand, seeing my name, I'm Italian. I remember the debates that there were in the 70s, 60s in Italy when the law on divorce actually came. And there was exactly this discussion on the unity of the family and the fact that divorce would have skyrocketed and that violence would have, and actually in this sense, violence reduced afterwards. And it's impressive that this patriarchal conception of society cannot disassociate family unity from violence. Is really worrying. One recommendation to the viewers is please leave a comment if you really want to interact with us. I already see there are some, which we will see at the end of our webcast. And now we have heard from Elif what we're going to lose in Turkey with the withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention. But as you have been hearing as well, this is a big issue in Turkey. It's also a very concerning issue in Europe. And since Poland is a country that's been threatening over and over, and has been used in Turkey as an example, to withdraw from the Istanbul Convention. And so I want to ask you, Aslihan, what actually has been the positive impact of the Istanbul Convention throughout Europe? Why do we need this instrument in Turkey, in Europe? Why is that important?
Thank you very much, Massimo. If I may, I just want to add something because I was thinking about it to your question on why women's rights are attacked in Turkey or anywhere. Because this actually is for me, it's an interpretation into the reality of if you don't have a policy or politics developed on women's rights, then it is the first thing that is going to be expendable. You need to develop a politics around it. So it is the same in Poland, in Europe as well. Why discussion on withdrawal on Istanbul Convention in place when you don't discuss any other human rights organization? Because I mean, there is disinformation around Istanbul Convention, and patriarchal system feels threatened with women's human rights, and the LGBTI discussion is used as an excuse on the family, threat to family, and they say yes to family, no to gender. So this is there playing with values of the society, which is very much closer to women's rights. I don't know why, because women are always put into the spectrum of the family policies, family understanding, and so forth. But on the contrary, even though this informed discussion continues, as European Women's Lobby, EWL, we were actually, as we were so proud of Turkey to be the first country to sign and give the name to the convention and so forth. We were in a big, and even though the implementation is, as Elif mentioned, there has been many problems, and we were using Istanbul Convention as a reference point, and we are still using it, and we will continue to use it as a reference point. In EWL, since 2019, we were in the, very dynamic preparation of a report which was targeting to talk about the positive impact of Istanbul Convention in Europe, in those state parties. And we have prepared, the report is launched 1 month earlier thanks to the withdrawal decision of Turkey. It was supposed to be launched on 11th of May on the anniversary, but then we launched it on 14th of April. And it is survey through the experts of the European Women's Lobby Observatory on Violence Against Women and Girls, and it is the surveys through 23 countries. Including Turkey, and in 19 of them EU member states, and 4 of them candidate countries. Non-EU member states, let's say, not all of them are candidates either, but state parties to the convention. So, I mean, it actually starts with the point that 1/3 of women in Europe, which is relevant to 62 million women, has experienced physical and or sexual violence since the age of 15. And the other data is 1 in 10 women has experienced some form of sexual violence, and 5% of women have been raped within Europe. So these are big numbers. So according to the findings of this report, good laws and implementation on the ground can change many things and our societies. So it shows 96% who ratified through the ratified countries have changed in policies. So 96% of change in policies is a big number. For example, 13 countries have amended or are in the process of amending their criminal legislation on the definition of on sexual violence and also rape to better align with the convention itself. Another data is 83% of those countries have development on protection. So, there are 4 pillars, policies, protection, prevention, and prosecution. So in protection, 83%. It's also a good number. Several countries have significantly increased their financial allocations and resources for shelters and other support services, apparently. So this is another positive impact. And 83% of those countries on protection, I have said, and 70% of them on prevention. Prevention meaning their involvement on creating awareness, or making progress towards developing school programs, or addressing different campaignings on, Istanbul Convention and how to tackle violence against women on the ground. So this is 70% of improvement. This is also a very good percentage. And then we have prosecution. On prosecution, there is 61%. So prosecution seems lower because it is a legal family. It is what there is also very big. It's a very good, amount of change. So new legislation and on protection emergency orders have also been introduced and used increasingly, apparently. And there are countries like Romania, which also already have very good examples in place. So when we look at Turkey within this perspective, we also have, in the scope of policies, we say changes in civil and criminal law, thanks to Istanbul Convention, have been in place. National action plan, even we criticize and we still say there are so many problems in the implementation. There are things which, thanks to Istanbul Convention, have been put in place, like this national action plan on the violence against women. It should be better, of course. This is another discussion, but I'm just sharing with you the existing positive developments. So helplines, shelters, and women's centers strengthened. It should be better, and there are so many gaps within the system. It is here. It is there. I cannot say there is not a good perfect scenario, but it has started to improve, and we have been there to bring how should I say, more discussion or added value to make it better. We have used this tool to make everything better. Another thing on prosecution, positive developments in investigation and prosecution was taking place in a better sense. Protection orders for victims were, used more effectively. So on the prevention side, awareness raising on violence against women and girls, and also domestic violence was in place, together with trainings for the prosecutors and judges were in place. So these are all thanks to the Istanbul Convention. And this is why we keep saying we will uphold Istanbul Convention, even though this decision may take, forward and be official on the 1st of July. So Istanbul Convention saves lives, and it will continue to save life, not only in Turkey, but also in Europe. And this is why we're going to continue our campaigning, which will take place, already started with this report, and we will continue to, share the findings in Europe and also in Turkey through our national and international campaigns. So please tune in.
No, absolutely. And it's clear how the Istanbul Convention has actually contributed to enlarge the framework and to really have a systemic also approach. Before we go to the end, I'm almost on my last question. I wanted to share a bit some reactions. We have a particular follower, Selma Kuner. I want to show what she encourages. She says a very insightful statement by the speakers. That we will continue to uphold the convention with perseverance. It's good to hear that the presidential decision is null and void for the women's movements in Turkey. And the withdrawal is not only against women's rights, but against human rights as a whole. I think there is agreement to what we said, and even concern for what's going on in Poland. Finally, there is more concerted and bold action needed from international instruments to uphold the Istanbul Convention and other international instruments, since this withdrawal is a threat to all human rights treaties. That's what this meeting, thank you, is very critical. So thank you for the appreciation, Selma. And I take the chance really from these reactions from Selma to ask you basically the final question, which definitely I shouldn't be the one to answer as both international, but particularly as men. I think this is really fully for you, is what should we all do? And when I mean all, I mean civil society in Turkey, I mean civil society internationally, I mean institutions like the United Nations, the Council of Europe, or the European Union, but also women and also men. What should we all do to defend women's rights in Turkey in this moment? What is needed for that? Maybe Elif, do you want to start?
Yeah, thank you so much. There are two things, like that's already said, but and Selma also rightfully mentioned it. One of them is that this is not just like a women's rights issue. Sadly, this is something that like women's rights is seen as this like a separate subsection of human rights, as if it can be just like we don't need to pay much attention to it. It's not like that. And secondly, I think that like Aslihan also mentioned, this is not just about, it's actually very significant to highlight that this is not just about Turkey, sadly, unfortunately. Maybe we would wish to have this problem only in Turkey, but this is like a patriarchal problem that's happening all around you. Like the statement by the officials in Turkey highlighted that there are similar discussions going on in Poland, for instance. So they know it, they see it, they see this like there is a transnational attack against women's rights. There is a transnational misogynist and sexist front happening. And this has been going on for a while. We have seen this coming. My colleagues who are older than me, they have seen this coming, but now it's really strong. And we have to highlight that like this is not just about Turkey now. This is all about, this is for all women all around the world, and maybe like more specifically for women in Europe. So this discussion will begin in Poland. They have this like preparations going on for a new law on family again to prevent this. They are claiming to prevent violence against women by preserving the family. And we know that there are similar discussions happening, and not just even like Eastern European countries, but Western European countries as well. So I just want to highlight that this is a general human rights issue, general equality issue, and at the same time, this is not specific to Turkey.
Thank you very much. Aslihan?
Thank you, Elif. I mean, I would. Where should I start? There are so many things to be done because it is a case of solidarity. And it's not only a solidarity, but it's a legal and political campaigning ownership that we have to create, not only through women's rights organizations. I mean, in Turkey, in Europe, women's rights organizations are very dynamic and very in much power. I mean, I trust on the women's movement in Turkey, in Europe, in the globe, and we have been advocating for our rights, not only for our own rights, but also within the human rights, family. We have always been there for all those in the stake of losing their rights, and we have always been shown. I mean, actually, women's movement is the best opposition against far right and conservative politics that is in place. That's what Elif was actually stressing again with Poland and the bloc of the Eastern European, or the even including Russia. Those states, they have been advocating against women's rights and against LGBTI plus rights in the defense of family and so forth. But this creates another, on the opposite side. I think we should be aware of the responsibility to those, not only women's rights organizations, but human rights networks, human rights organizations, those states who claim that they are the safeguard, they are those countries who have created those mechanisms and supported those mechanisms on safeguarding Istanbul Convention, human rights conventions, international treaties, and so forth. Now it is our responsibility altogether to not only uphold Istanbul Convention, but also create this awareness that human rights are not expansible, neither on the refugee deals that take place within the EU level, nor in the international fora. I mean, so it is very important to create this ownership, and I also would like to welcome your organization as our international commissions and jurists to all those relevant human rights defenders, associations, institutions, Council of Europe, EU institutions. They have already shared their statements, but we need to go beyond the statements, where we create this ownership through legal and political, action, so that we create not only on Turkey to this pressure to reverse the decision, but also this creating this ownership on the long run that human rights are not expansible, and also women's human rights are not expansible for any political or local, national level political bargaining on elections and so forth. This is not a power game. This is a patriarchal power game, and we are not part of it. So we will always be on the side where women's rights and human rights are defended. And together with those who would like to take part in our campaign, you can take it as a call, and we will continue to uphold Istanbul Convention together with politicians, civil society organizations, individuals who are willing to safeguard the international instruments together with us.
Thank you very much, and as I absolutely subscribe to all of this, we got also the thanks from the Women's Coalition of Turkey. It wants to show if anyone wants to follow them also on Twitter. I espouse absolutely that, and as International Commission of Jurists, we're going to try to do our best as well, because as you all both said, and I think this is the main lesson to get today, attacking women's rights and the instruments for the protection of women's rights is not only a women's rights issue, is not only a Turkey issue. This is going to be a fallout for all countries, and this is a fallout for all human rights, for the universality, for the indivisibility, for the non-discrimination. It's very key and important to hold the line and defend human rights. Thank you very, very much for being with us. We're going to be back in some months, maybe to see what's happened. I hope we can have good news instead of bad news. But thank you very much for having been with us and giving your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye to everyone and to all those who followed us.
Thank you, everyone.